Welcome to the Roots News Podcast, All Things Volunteer. Hi, I'm Curt Springstead, and I'm your host today. So in this episode, we're talking about with representatives of AARP about the do-it-yourself and do-it-yourself programs, better known by their abbreviations DIY and DIY Plus. And these the Speakers Bureau programs are designed to share information of value to those 50 plus and bring AARP right into the community. In addition, we'll explain the role of the support team known as the DIY Working Group, or DWG, that states can draw on to start or grow their speakers programs. And to help me explain this to you today, I have Christina Wally, with the Office of Volunteer Engagement, and Joan McCarty, DIY Plus lead, Doug Tayak, the advisor for curriculum design of turnkey programs, and Becky Hayes, the DWG volunteer lead. So I think the first thing is, please explain the origin story of this DIY program. What were the goals of the program, and what led to its creation of its sister program, the DIY Plus effort, recently?
So thanks, Curt. I'll take that one. The DIY program came about in around 2018. It was recognized that state offices were, creating their own presentations, doing their own, creating their own talking points, and as they were engaging in the community, really using their own materials, and nothing was uniform. And I can say, as a former ASD in a state, my volunteers had their own stuff and their own materials and did a great job. But in 2018, it was recognized that if there was an effort made to standardize these materials, it could really be a benefit to the state offices and to the national office and our national partners, especially those subject matter experts that wanted their resources shared and wanted the story told about their work, but to do so in a way that was consistent with AARP's messaging, values, and priorities. And so the first of the DIY toolkits was rolled out in 2018 with the goal of being sort of that standardized content. Literally that, it's DIY for named DIY for a reason, and that the goal of the presentations were that state offices, volunteers, staff, either or, could take the presentation, turn them around, and make a present, and have that community conversation, in their neighborhood, and it would be relevant and impactful information, and allow the states to then just expand their role in their community and do so in a way that was, true to the mission and values and the principles laid out by each of the subject matter experts in each of the different issue areas within AARP. So this continued, the first round of these were created in 2018. They've been refined and developed since. I took over this role in November of 2023 and have been lucky to really work with some great folks, both staff and volunteer alike, both, from within, those issue area teams, from our national office, but then also work a lot with our state office partners, because that's who's doing this work. And so we're up to 26 offerings now through our DIY toolkits. A number of them have been translated and acculturated into Spanish. And so they're being used in an impactful way in Hispanic speaking, in Spanish speaking communities. And that's really where we are now with where they are. We're trying to refine them and looking for different topics and new opportunities, new offerings. But they are a response to the fact that, volunteers throughout the states were going out and making presentations, and what we wanted to create was a uniform and an impactful set of presentations that they could just turn around quickly and use to the best of their abilities to spread AARP guidance and messaging and impact. So.
Okay.
And then we came shortly after the DWG. So the DIY work group was started in 2021 in a response to a lot of these states that were organizing around this amazing resource that Doug is the gatekeeper to. So we really look to help support states that were trying to organize around these in volunteer programs. So a lot of states call them Speakers Bureau programs. Some states call them education teams. Some states call them speaker teams. I'll say Speakers Bureau for the sake of this conversation, because I do think that's the majority. And really, our response was we wanted to help states that needed virtual training during the pandemic for their speakers that had been traditionally only in-person presenters until the pandemic hit. So we really helped kind of launch them or springboard them into the virtual world as well. And then what we came to see was there was a lot of other areas that states wanted assistance with. So we help advise if your state is looking to better utilize the translated resources that Doug works with our team on. If you are looking to, create volunteer programs and really take them to the next level. If you need someone to help train your speakers, we can help do that. We also record demonstration videos and put them on the portal. Speakers can see another seasoned presenter delivering this content. So really, our goal is just to help states best utilize these amazing assets that programs and Turnkey manages and help states organize volunteers around them. But whether you have a full-blown speakers bureau or just a few speakers or a speaker in your state that wants to utilize these toolkits, we can help support. So we are happy to help do consultations, trainings, provide resources, basically anything the state needs around organizing.
Great.
And then along came DIY Plus, and DIY Plus actually first pilot started in the fall of 2022, and we have been piloting since. The program was set up to help the emerging speaker bureaus or states with, who are looking to set up speaker bureaus, and to provide them with support using the DIY toolkits and Turnkey, where Turnkey provides the operational support. So we set up, we'll find a venue if you don't have one in mind. We will set the events up in CVET for you, and we will be on site the day of the event to support the volunteer-led presentation. It's worked out great, and we've learned as the past couple of years have gone by. In fact, this year we added a couple of new features, if you will, to the operational support that goes along with DIY Plus. One of the focuses has been, how do we, and I'll just back up a sec to say that the state office does have certain responsibilities in this program, right? So it's not all handled by Turnkey. The state manages the volunteers and the volunteer presentations, but they're also responsible for the promotion of these events. But 2025, we've added direct mail as something that Turnkey is trying. In fact, our first set of direct mail goes out next week to try and help with registration for these events, to, as another method of promotion. So we're testing it to see how it would work. And the other opportunity that's available as part of the DIY Plus programming this year is participating in pop-ups. So we have 3 different activations that we deliver in community, and this year we're including volunteers in those pop-ups. So the state office volunteers and our Turnkey vendor are co-hosting these events. And so far, that's going great as well. We're really excited. The volunteers seem to be enjoying it. And we're engaging with lots of folks in community, which is terrific.
That's great. Thanks very much. I have to say, some of you know me, so I've been a consumer of the DIY products for about 5 years now, and I can tell you that here at New Jersey Speakers Bureau, if we'd had to roll our own, we would be years behind where we are now in terms of getting out there and getting great content. So we we're the biggest fans of Doug and Christina and everyone here. I could just a little personal recommendation if I can.
Well, Curt, and just one thing on that too. I think I failed to touch on this, as you mentioned. They helped you sort of speed the process along. One of the benefits of the DIY toolkits is we've put them through the Office of General Counsel review process. So you don't have to go. So states don't have to go through that. Volunteers don't have to, sort of wait and maybe gnash their teeth waiting for a response from our attorneys who review all of this. These are already vetted by our general counsel. And so they are that's part of why they're ready to go. It's why they're DIY. Right. There's no turnaround time on that. They are vetted, they're approved, and are ready to go. So I think it's an important piece I wanted to touch on, and I thought it connected with your thought there. And thank you for your great work in New Jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the pre-check line at the airport.
Right.
And also, I think the beauty of them is that you don't have to, they're DIY for a reason. I don't think the words DIY are necessarily innate, right? If you're a volunteer just picking up this resource for the first time. But really, DIY means you don't have to be an expert on any of the topics to deliver them. Whether you're a volunteer or staff, you can take them. And so that's really the beauty of these products. They're conversational. I also couldn't recommend them more, Curt. I know I'm biased, but I think they're a really great asset. You don't need to be Sanjay Gupta to give brain health, right? You just need to have an interest in delivering social mission programming.
I'm always afraid to be in my audience, but you don't have to be him to do it. Yes.
Perfect. Well, and they can be delivered with or without technology. That's the other piece. Yes. If you got 10 people in a room and you got 15 minutes to just have a conversation, like Christine said, they can be delivered that way. If you've got 100 people in a lecture hall on a small college campus, you can deliver it with a full PowerPoint and videos and everything else. So, and that's true for all 26 of our offerings. So,
I'm trying to make the term of acapella go viral is what we talk about when we don't use technology when we deliver them, but we'll see how that goes. So let's move on. We've talked about what they are, but so how is DIY Plus organized? And then in a bit, we'll get into like how we actually engage with them. But let's just talk, how are they organized and what are we looking at?
So, as I touched on, these are offerings for our state office partners to use, right? These are for our state teams, our volunteers, the staff across the country, and so they're set up that way where their state offices can just, volunteers or staff can take them and run with them and use them how they see fit. And they're designed to be flexible. They're designed to be, again, DIY, user friendly, and so they're there for the state's discretion for that volunteer who may be that speaker, that may have a passion for fraud prevention or for Social Security engagement. They're right there for them to take them and run with them, and they are theirs to use. So that's how we've set them up, and that's how we hope that states are using them, is that they take them and they run with them, and help them. It's another resource there to help maximize their community impact. And like I said, I know that when I was in a state office, I was one of the first subscribers to DIY Plus. And I know that the team that I had there in Cleveland, Ohio, did a great job at DIY Plus and saw a great value in it. But part of it is these resources are right there; they're easy to use, and that's how it's structured. States can take them and use them as they see fit.
Great.
And DWG is a volunteer organized group. So I am the staff partner, but there are 22 volunteers that help support the states. Becky is our lead volunteer. You'll hear from her in just a moment. And we are organized into a training and support team, a communications team, a demo team, and also under our demo team is our interstate speakers, or speakers that can work with your state if you don't have a speaker, and an admin team that manages the volunteer portal piece. Becky is our lead for the admin team as well. And all of the DIYs can be found under the DIY Toolkits and Speakers Bureau library on the volunteer portal. So we also partner with Doug on that library.
Mm-hmm.
And the DIY toolkits are used specifically for the DIY Plus presentations. So our hope is that, participating in the DIY Plus program will help expand reach in the community by delivering these volunteer-led presentations. And so, we meet as a group monthly. The DIY Plus markets, there are 11 of them this year. We had 7 who returned from last year and actually the year before, and 4 that joined us newly this year as new groups. And so, we use specifically the DIY Plus, and all of the events are in-person events. Okay. I know that sometimes folks use the DIY toolkits and they deliver them virtually, but from a DIY Plus perspective, that's all done in person.
Good. Thank you. So exactly how do the states engage with these programs? What do we have to do?
Oh, Becky, you're on mute.
Still haven't trained that mute button. I keep trying. For one of the, to get a hold of DWG and some of our, utilize our services, we have a request form that will be put in the notes.
Yep.
And you can fill that out and we will get right back to you. It tells you everything that we offer, from consultation to deep dive workshop and anything in between. We are customizable. So that's the beauty of that. If you're a Speakers Bureau lead or a staff, we also have a chatter group that we have set up that you can get information right away. And Doug with Turnkey is part of our admin on that, and he inputs the updates on the DIY products.
Great. So Joan, you mentioned that there's markets. Do we engage with you differently than the rest of the program?
They really don't. The only difference, like I had said earlier, Curt, was the fact that, we do the operational support for these events.
Okay.
One of the things that we do that maybe is a little bit different than what's done with some of the other DIY presentations is that we do a survey at the end of each presentation, at the end of each event. And it's the enterprise survey. It's the same one that's used, across AARP. Just because we want to measure, we want to see, how the program is running. How is it working? What do people think? What suggestions do they have? Do they have any at all? And I have to say, this year, our survey feedback has been great. We haven't had a ton of programs that have run since we're only in the beginning of April. We run programs anywhere from February through November, but to date, the satisfaction score for those programs is 99% out of 100, yeah, which is awesome. The perceived knowledge gain, right? So people, let us know if they've learned anything. We're at 95%. So 95% of them, folks have walked away saying that they've learned something. And then the Net Promoter Score, which measures whether people are willing to will positively share, information about these events with others. We're at 94.4%, which again is like terrific. Right. So we're doing very, very well in the delivery, and people are walking away feeling like they've learned something.
That's great. So Doug, you were talking about the kits and we can make it our own, but I'm afraid there must be some guardrails, because otherwise we're back to the whole reason we started this, right?
Right. And, and this is the number one way that I interact with states and volunteers. We have a system set up for updates and things for the toolkits, but it is true. Volunteers and staff can edit these toolkits to their needs, right? So if you have a 15-minute presentation at, your local Kiwanis club, or dare I say, an AARP chapter, and you get 15 minutes before they're going to start shuffling the poker cards to talk about Social Security, you can cut down understanding Social Security, the understanding your Social Security toolkit, to 15 minutes. That's fine. You can edit that and decide what it is that you want to put in, or take out, and keep in that presentation. Where we draw the line is if you feel the need to add new information, you have to have that put through the Office of General Counsel OGC review process, which if a volunteer asks for a state office partner, we'll tell them that's not a fun and easy process to go through. So it's not one that we see a lot of, but you are free if you want it. If you feel like, Jumpstart Your Job Search needs some kind of addition, you can go through the hoops and the design process and, submit your edits to OGC and see what they say, but really, we feel like, it's our belief that we've done the legwork for you. You shouldn't have to do that. You should need it. The other piece is, I'm here for a reason. If you feel like there is something that is missing from a toolkit, if you feel like there's something that could be, that there's an error in a toolkit, God forbid, and they happen, right? You can shoot me an email directly. And I've said this to every volunteer that I've come across in this role, every state office partner, every state office staff member that I've come across, come to me directly with that. I want to know, and I want to see if we can get that made right. I just got a really long email from a volunteer who engages with everybody on this team, who will remain nameless, with their feedback on the newer understanding your Social Security toolkit. And his feedback was great. And it really is something that I don't think we thought about earlier in the year. And so I'm taking that to the campaigns team, and we're going to parse through that language. But that's why I'm here, and that's why, my role exists, and why we think the toolkits are such strong offerings. The other piece is we've put together a process of editing these and updating them. We recognize that there are some toolkits that need to be updated every 6 months, and some can go 2 to 3 years. And so if you go on the volunteer portal and you look in the DIY toolkits and speakers bureau folder, you will see our update calendar, and it lists the updates, the coming updates for each toolkit, or if they've been updated, what the scope of those updates were. In fact, I just finished editing Jumpstart Your Job Search today. You'll hear it first, right? The new one's going to be uploaded to the portal and to SharePoint this afternoon, the afternoon of this recording, because it's brand new. Those updates and what's been changed will be listed on that calendar. And then, with a to be determined for when we'll look to update that again in the future. But that's the role that I have with this, and the way that I interact with state office volunteers and staff and those folks who are delivering these resources. The other piece I think that's important with this in the engagement side is the Your Questions Answered tool. It's not available for every toolkit. It's only available for toolkits that touch on specific topics: Social Security, Medicare, caregiving, fraud, retirement planning, and financial awareness. But the YQA for short, because it's AARP, everything has to have an acronym. YQA is there, to help volunteers to not have to stand up in front of a room and say, I don't have the answer to your question, or I'm not an expert. The YQA tool was built to alleviate that by giving folks a place to go to ask the question that maybe is too specific, right? I think we've all been in the Social Security presentation when somebody has a very specific question about their benefit that nobody's going to be able to answer short of a representative from the Social Security Administration. YQA is there now. That presenter can say, if you go to answers.aarp.org, if your answer is not found in the Social Security FAQs, frequently asked questions, you can submit your question through YQA, and you will get an answer from a Social Security expert within 3 to 4 business days. And that is the pledge that comes with YQA. And it's there, as much to help those folks who are, asking the questions or have the questions in the presentation, but it's there as much to help the volunteers who are making those presentations, because we want them to feel confident and know that if they don't have an answer, they don't have to stand there and say, I'm not an expert. They can simply say, you know what, that's beyond my scope that I can answer, but here's where you can go to get your questions answered. So, those are the different ways that, maintaining the toolkits, maintaining the integrity of the toolkits, making sure that I'm working with our subject matter experts to answer the questions of our volunteers who are making these presentations, and getting the right updates and getting those things changed and edited. It's an important piece, but then also making sure that we have things like YQA that are allowing volunteers across the country to make these presentations with confidence and secure in the knowledge that what they're presenting is the best knowledge that we can find and offer, and that also that we have their back. So that's important, and that's how I interact with states and volunteers more than any other way in this role.
Yes, and we certainly appreciate it, Doug.
Well, thanks, Becky. Did Curt freeze?
Okay. Sorry. What I was saying is the one thing is that doesn't require approval is we've made localization. So if there's local resources, we just add that to the handouts, or sometimes we mention that during the presentation. So
right.
That's an insider's treat. So before my internet completely belies me here. So I'm just curious, what kind of outcomes have we observed since we've created this program? I don't, in terms of whatever measures you might have. Just curious how states have seen the benefits.
Well, we've had more dynamic speaker bureaus. We definitely have increased partnership and collaboration with Turnkey, which has allowed us to increase our support. Since our inception, we've had over 100 trainings and currently supported 29 states out of those 100. We have more coming in all the time. So we have a lot of growth and a little bit more definition and strength to support those nationwide speaker bureaus. We also have trainings on the volunteer portal in the training tab for DWG, which we started a little over a year and a half ago. And since then, we have, there's been 216 people that have taken advantage of our trainings online, and we're constantly updating them and adding new. So that's some numbers.
Okay.
And from a DIY Plus perspective, I'll just hop in and say that what we have found is that it's not only presenters who are attending these sessions, right? These volunteer-led presentations, but we have also had other volunteers, some referred to as community volunteers, that come and participate as well, right? They may help check people in, or just, be there to give out some tchotchkes or whatever it may be. But through those experiences, they've seen that maybe it's not so bad to give a presentation. And so they've expressed interest in becoming part of the Speakers Bureau, which is great because ultimately, that is one of the main reasons why we are working on this, along with helping with outreach in the community.
Great.
I will say, though, there is a place where I think we could do, where I think better data collection could be very helpful. Especially with those presentations that are a result of, an organization reaching out to your state office speakers bureau and saying, hey, we've got 25 people at a church. We'd like to hear about, Medicare, enrolling in Medicare. If there's the best way that we have to know, that these are being used and that they're of value is through that data that's collected. And right now, there's not a lot of it that's being collected, in those presentations that are being offered sort of without that AARP, automatic RSVP, right? It's one of the benefits of DIY Plus is they come with that AARP RSVP. Say that 3 times fast. But it's, if it's that, and we know that the vast majority of the DIY toolkits are being used in that capacity where you get a request from a local organization, they want that presentation. The more data we can collect on that basic user, hey, even if it's just, I made this presentation and there were 25 people there, that's a great start. If you can collect that name, email, zip code, then we know that, we can follow up and they can get that survey. And then, to Joan, Joan rattled off the data that is very impressive, right? And we know that these are well received, but that data helps, the turnkey programs team, determine, okay, should we go to, a deeper dive in a topic? For example, we're exploring right now, 6 Pillars of Brain Health is up for input. We're collecting feedback on 6 Pillars of Brain Health to the end of April. part of the feedback we've gotten is it would be great to have a deeper dive into the pillars of brain health by maybe having a second toolkit. Now that information is anecdotal. It's come from 2 or 3 sources. If we can collect that empirical data, and I know that, when I was in ASD in Ohio, I would get the question from the volunteers all the time, why am I collecting this information? What is it good for? And as much as my answer in the back of my head was, well, it's our engagement metric, which, states are, defined in their success, or, states define their success around engagements. It also allows teams like ours to better determine how we're using resources and what we're designing and what we're putting in place. And so that data collection is vital for us, because it allows us then to provide those resources that will better help you, deliver greater impact in your community, because it will be more relevant, because we will have those, we will have the information we need to make sure our work is fulfilling, the needs that all of the communities have around the country, and all of our volunteers are looking for, within each topic that's being presented. So that data piece is really important. I can't stress it enough. On behalf of your staff partners, I'm urging you to collect as much of the data as you can from your audiences, because for us, from a turnkey perspective, it really helps guide our work and the direction that we want to take the DIY resources.
Yeah, I'm sure it also validates the need for the program, but that's the incidental. So I'm sort of curious. Have we ever had any specific events or efforts that you might be able to point to of just the power of what these can do for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the power lies in the fact that so many of our states kind of organically started organizing around this resource. So there was never an edict that came down from AARP leadership or an influence to say, hey, start a Speakers Bureau program, right? It just, states started to see the value and the power of how having a local volunteer in their local community delivering this is the paramount, right? Like that's the best practice. And so we have seen that 43 states have just kind of organically started creating some sort of DIY program. A majority of those states are giving 36 plus presentations a year, right? That's 3 presentations a month in their communities. So, I mean, just the power of that we were able to kind of just help support and lift up that work is, I think, speaks for itself. When a state doesn't have a speaker as well, we were able to create through the DWG a outlet for other states to call upon to be able to say, hey, I don't have a speaker that's really trained in Medicare in my state. Do you have anyone? And we're able to have that speaker from maybe another state come in and deliver a presentation on behalf. And it's a uniform experience. It's still an AARP volunteer. It's still the same content. It's just really able to kind of help make that connection for the state that doesn't have someone. So I think that's a role that we're really proud of playing, that we can help support the states in that way when they don't have a speaker. And then, this is a really big year across the organization. We're really kind of reevaluating and looking at how we work with our grassroots volunteers and volunteers that are doing advocacy work. I think this is another great resource and tool to be able to use that. So, for example, if your state was going to know that next legislative session, you're championing a piece of legislation on caregiving, great, use your Speakers Bureau, right? Use the volunteers in your state to go hammer that target legislator's district with caregiving presentations, right? So then you can say, I talked to 300 people in your district that are concerned about caregiving and family caregiving in your area. So I think more and more states are starting to leverage these Speakers Bureaus to help also work with their advocacy initiatives, which I think there is immense power in that, right? Again, it's a local volunteers talking to their local legislator, talking to local constituents about the issues that matter most to the 50 plus. In addition, I think, as Becky said, all of our trainings that we've been able to put out, we want to make it easier for states to be able to train and activate speakers. So that's a lot of where our training and supports come in. It's a lot of where our trainings in the portal come in. And our goal is to make sure that, whether you're a brand new volunteer or a seasoned volunteer that's just looking to get involved in this work, you feel like you have the tools and you're equipped to go out and deliver this. So I'd say from the work that we're doing, that's really where I think the power of these programs come from, both the power of the DIY toolkits through speakers bureaus and the power that DWG can help to support and lift up this work.
Well, I think the other power piece that we don't want to forget about is that going out in the community enables AARP to partner with and create partnerships with, other organizations, other groups within the community. In so many instances, we find opportunities where, maybe there's an Alzheimer's group and they're doing something on dementia, and, we can do a coordinating caregiving presentation to go along with that. So I think that the power kind of extends out into the community as well, or sharing what AARP has to offer within the community.
Right. I mean, it's always better to be out in the public, let them know we're there and what we do, right? So absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. So I'm just curious, this has been, one program's been going since 2018 or whatever. So what can I look forward to in the future in any of the cases? Any big expansions or additions?
Yeah, so from the DWG, we have really asked states in partnership with turnkey programs. We put out a survey end of last year into this year to have states kind of self-select where they are on a continuum, whether they're in an emerging, robust, or sustained category. And we're going to be customizing supports to help state speakers bureaus go to the next level. So from us, that's really our biggest priority this year, in addition to creating outlets for folks to communicate around these assets. So Becky had mentioned the chatter group earlier on the volunteer portal to get information, but also chatter around best practices, right? Chat around what's happening. We're going to be reviving our peer leader forums for Speakers Bureau leaders and staff to help share amongst each other as well. So I think what you're going to see from us is more customized supports, new supports, so new trainings, new resources, and then also more avenues for communication amongst the folks doing this work.
Okay.
And, from a DIY perspective, there's a lot of good things happening. Right now, there are 3 new toolkits in the works. One that just is in the middle of going through OGC review right now and should be ready either next week or the week after. It's a topic we've never touched on before, but it's one I think that folks have asked for, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to tune in to find out, right? And then there are 2 others on topics that are popular, but are expansions of those topics. And on top, one of the things that we do too is these haven't been updated since 2018, right? The toolkits, the look of them. And so we actually partnered with a great graphic designer and developed a new template for the toolkit. So as we're going through and updating these, we're putting them into the new template. And so the new template gives them a great look. It's clean. It's really well representative of the AARP brand. And it makes them uniform. And so whether it's, Social Security or it's, Medicare or fraud, they will have a similar feel and look to them. And so if you're doing these especially if you're doing them in a series, people will not miss that this information is coming from AARP, and it represents, the brand and the information that we're trying to put forward in a very, very strong and very, very clean and sort of modern way. So I'm excited for folks to use those, to see the new toolkits as they get updated. The other piece too is that, we're in the middle of updating, I think, 2 of the more popular toolkits in FraudWatch Basics and 6 Pillars of Brain Health. And I know that the fraud team, the feedback I've gotten has been great. Please, 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 you have until April 30th to give me your input on these 2 toolkits. And I know how popular they are. The fraud team has some interesting ideas about how to redo the FraudWatch Basics toolkit. And I think if those come to fruition, and even if it's half of their idea comes to fruition, they will be a unique offering that our volunteers will find great value in delivering, and we'll offer them some flexibility to not just talk about sort of what's in FraudWatch Basics, but also have some flexibility around if they want to take a deeper dive into some of the other topics within fraud that they may want to cover, especially if they're going back to repeat audiences. So some really unique things there. We also have a big push around translation. We want to have all these toolkits in Spanish and in acculturated Spanish, so they're conversational, by the end of this year. That is a goal we're working on. We'll have more on that in June, but it is, we're well on our way. We have a great partnership with DWG and a few of the volunteers from the DWG. Marilyn Diaz and her team, work on the translations with us, and they make sure that they're, culturally appropriate and that they're conversational. And we've had great success so far with that and great feedback. Ironically, I did horrible in Spanish in high school and in college, so I'm completely reliant on everybody else because I took Latin in high school, and even that doesn't help me with Spanish. But so some big things coming. We really want to make sure that these are the best possible resources that we can offer. And again, most importantly, for our volunteers, if you have feedback, please don't be shy. And I know most of you aren't. Send me an email. Hey, this is what I think could be better. Or hey, this is awesome. Please don't change it. I would ask you, please CC your staff partners so that they know that you're coming to somebody who works for a national team. I know that when I was in ASD in an office, I wanted my volunteers to make sure I was copied if they're going, to a national partner. But that's what I'm here for. And that feedback is super important. So those are the things that are coming. Those are the big things that we're doing, that are coming forward, that are moving forward, and that really make me feel good about what we're offering our volunteers in states.
Okay. So great. Well, so we're, at this point, they must want to know, well, how do I do this? So what's the recommendation? How do our listeners engage, whether they're looking to perhaps bootstrap a program, or if they're looking to move ahead, as Christina was talking about, progress their group from the basics all the way up to a sustaining organization? How do we do that?
Well, quite a few ways. As Christina mentioned, we are doing a lot behind the scenes as far as developing things and utilizing the volunteer portal for a lot of our information sheets, anything that can help Speakers Bureau for events, from sign-up sheets to how to start a Speakers Bureau. We also have in the chat, I can put a link, our URL link, or in the notes. And we also have an email, DIYprograms@aarp.com.
.org.
.org. My bad. Here, I thought I had that down. Okay. So it's DIYprograms@aarp.org. And we also have a QR code if you like QR codes to a link to request our services.
Okay. Very good. And the DIY, how do we do that? A plus?
For DIY Plus, if anyone else is interested in participating in the program, please reach out to me, Joan McCarty. It's JMCCARTY@aarp.org. And I'm happy to speak with any other groups who are interested in participating.
All right, great. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, I think we pretty much covered the bases, but is there anything that I feel we left on the table that we should fit in before we go?
I want to stress one thing, and it's important. All of us work really hard to make sure that these resources are the best and the best we can offer, and also the most current. And I know that, and I speak from experience on this one. There are folks who like to hold on to the presentation that they're comfortable with. And what I would stress is, before you make a presentation, please double check on the portal to make sure you're using the newest version, the most updated version. You can do that in the portal. It's super easy. You can either drop me a question in the chatter group, or you can just follow. It's a pretty simple pathway. It's just files, libraries, DIY toolkits, and Speakers Bureau. And I'll make sure that that's in the notes too. And you will see the folder for each of the topics that we offer a DIY presentation. Double check that folder. Make sure you're using the newest version, because a lot of times, if I'm getting requests to make edits, we will make those edits, but then what good does it do if you're using the outdated version? Or things may change. I mean, we've updated the Social Security Toolkit, I think 6 times since we created it last November. we redid it last November, and then it's undergone at least 4 major updates and 2 small ones in the last 5 months, right? So it is as up to date as we can possibly make it. It has, and in a time when Social Security is in the public, conversation, please make sure you're using the newest version, the most updated version, and you can do that by just checking the portal. Bookmark the DIY Toolkits and Speakers Bureau folder if you can, but it's just files, libraries, DIY Toolkits and Speakers Bureau, and I update that one before I update the SharePoint for employees. So please, I just want to stress that, and then also please collect your information, as much data as you can, because it's just so helpful. So
very good.
Those are 2 things I want to stress, and then you can reach me with any questions at dtayek@aarp.org.
Very good.
And I want to add on one thing to what Doug had said, and as far as editing and downloading your first one, we also can help states put in their current state logo so that those are updated too, and state information. That's something that we can help with.
And every toolkit comes with different slides for the intro, for state events to list, and then state contact info. Those slides are all there for you to add your state lockup, your state logo, any state information, specific information you want for that community. So please reach out to Becky if you need help with that. But those are built in the toolkits, so it's important.
Very good. All right. Anybody else?
I just want to say we're here to help. From the DWG, our main goal is to make states more comfortable with these resources, volunteers and staff. Whether it's just a quick conversation or an in-person training, we can do just about anything to help support your state. So please reach out to us. We want to help.
And we are flexible.
Yes, very good. Listen, I want to thank you all for sharing your perspective and information on this really innovative and from my own experience, just fantastic program with our audience. And then I want to thank our audience for being with us, and hopefully you found this useful today. We encourage you to subscribe to the Roost News podcast channel on either YouTube or your favorite audio podcast channel. And of course, please invite your colleagues and friends to join us. And on behalf of the Roost News podcast team, we thank you.